I used to think that residential schools were a good idea, with some bad apples in it. Surely they were just like boarding schools in the UK. And there were some bad people who got into that. But I'm now in a place that I will say to you that residential schools were an evil system. An evil system created by our government. An evil system to assimilate First Nations people, to destroy their culture, their language, their traditions, because it was us, friends. It was us. It might have been another generation who started the residential schools, who ran the residential schools, but they were Anglicans. And it was us. And we were part of that.
The past is a story that doesn't change, frozen in time. We can't turn back. It's so one-sided. There's nothing we can do about what was. But our history shapes what happens tomorrow. It created who we are. It draws the outline of who we are becoming. But if there's nothing we can do about the story of what was, we can tell a different story about what is to be. And this story, like all the good ones, is about a journey.
Heal me that I might be healed. Save me that I might be saved. For you alone are my.
How can we symbolically re-enter the land? And I've struggled with this listening to a young Native American woman speaking at the University of Victoria, and she was asked a question from a settler, what do you want us to do? And she said very kindly and gently, if it was possible, it would be good if you all went back to where you came from and left us here. But I know that's not possible, you're here to stay. So what I would like you to do is seriously look at what it means to just come short of breaking camp. And I thought about that. What does that look like for us, just to come short of breaking camp? It came to me once that what we need to do is to leave the land and re-enter the land. And this time not re-entering the land in some triumphal way, but re-entering the land in a humble way that will help us as an Anglican church on these islands, as a colonial church, to begin to decolonize ourselves.
For you
Long before there was incense and liturgy, before the settlers and their church came to the coast, the forest was home, a womb, a place to find all our relations, a place where all sacred journeys begin.
Alex found a trail here on Alert Bay that he took me around and showed me and said this would be a good place. He showed me a number of places I could stop and reflect.
We did that historically. We went out into the forest to seek one with ourselves and harmonize our hearts. And that's what I feel the Bishop was pursuing this morning.
You watch for spirit guides, and certainly the loudest and most noisiest spirit guides for me yesterday were the ravens. And there was one moment where I'd stopped, I'd taken a devotional book, small devotional book with me, and there was one moment where I stopped to read that. And I was reading that, and it was as if the raven came down and was engaging me in a conversation and saying to me, stop reading. We have far more important things to show you than you can find in a book or in words. And I put the book away and I walked on the journey. Would you believe the next thing I saw was a rabbit right in the middle of the woods there, on its own, standing in the pathway.
The Bishop felt compelled to reenact what he classified as a re-entry into our worlds, where the first entry was not He didn't see it as being honorable, respectful, and as a matter of fact, abusive. And so he wants to take time to re-enter this world and in our realm. He's coming into this big house to seek permission to enter the land of the Namgis.
Come, my chiefs of the Linkish. Our visitors have arrived. Escort them into our great house.
It was me knocking on the door and being greeted by the Nungus chiefs who spoke to me in Kakwala, and I had a speaker who was with me who responded on my behalf, and then we were given permission to enter into the land.
In the morning, the walking of Vancouver Island began, through Wass, Campbell River, Courtney, Parksville. A silent, 3-week, 480-kilometre sacred journey through the wilderness. His voice heard only in prayer, and to ask permission to enter the land of the First Nations along the way. Through Lanceville, Nanoose Bay, Ladysmith, and Saanich, he crossed his diocese during the Christian season of Lent. The leader of this branch of the Anglican Church was a pilgrim on a journey toward death and resurrection, looking for an end to domination and for the birth of a new relationship.
The sacred walk is, of course, a very important thing for First Nations peoples, and has been a way in which First Nations peoples have called attention to various issues and problems and to prayerfully walk towards solutions. But more than that, for Christians, it has been identified as the way in which Jesus lived in the world. We use the term pilgrimage to describe that quite often from a Western sense, but it is clearly the sacred walk, the same kind of thing that we see Bishop Logan doing, the same kind of thing that we see First Nations leaders doing.
What I was challenged with when I left Alert Bay by one of the elders was, he had said to me, each day, each step, pray for the children who run the residential schools. So what I did was, each day I went through alphabetically. I just thought of names, girls' names beginning in A going through to Z, and boys' names beginning with A and going through to Z. So I prayed for those names in a kind of symbolic way, remembering all the children who'd been in residential schools.
Make me an instrument, make me an instrument, make me an instrument of peace.
How kind and generous and gracious the first peoples were that we met, and how apparent the feeling of forgiveness was, that they were willing to forgive, that they were open to a conversation about a different relationship, about walking together with those of us who are descended from settlers, about working together and changing the relationship that we've had, which has very often been a difficult one.
So today we crossed from the traditional lands of the Comox people into the traditional lands of the Qualicum people, and we were greeted as we crossed the border between the two lands by Chief Michael. Michael welcomed me and gave us permission as Anglicans to enter the land and to stay on these traditional lands. We've been here for a long time, and this is the first time we've actually asked for permission to enter the land.
And I really want to admire the fact that you took responsibility for the church, that people have thought they were doing something for us as Aboriginals. You also spoke, I've heard these words before, about cultural genocide. Yeah, it happened. I'm one of the survivors, and it happened, right? They thought it was for the good of us. and it wasn't quite the way it turned out to be.
Every night we would share reflections of the day, and one of the things I would say, particularly as we got well into the journey, I would say, I thank God that we're still on our feet. The fact that we made it was well, while we expected it, we both had some trepidation about whether this was actually going to happen. So we talked each night about how joyful we were that we actually had survived another day.
Yeah, this is here.
In the beginning, when I set off, I thought, oh, I'll just be a bystander and a support person. As the trip progressed, I became fully involved with what was happening in my understanding, and my heart was involved more than what I had anticipated. Hearing people's stories, seeing the reality of our island and how our First Peoples live on our island just changed me and really gave me a new insight. It broadened my vision, so I'm changed.
I think that the biggest thing is the change in relationships. What I saw when we were stopping along the way at the First Nations communities and doing the actual act of asking for forgiveness and asking to continue living on this land in a new way was the formation of new relationships with First Nations people.
This symbolic act has the ability to walk further, so to speak. We're hoping that this act will inspire many, many others to do similar things. It's not necessarily a literal walk, but a re-walking of the steps, kind of reset of the relationship between the churches and Canada, to First Nations peoples, to the peoples of the land, to the First Nations, Inuit and Métis.
To re-enter the land means to re-enter history. It's a journey back in time, to find a road that was not taken. We begin again. The Bishop's Road ended on Easter Sunday at the cathedral in Victoria. And while baptizing the future in the tears of the past is one way to roll the stone of oppression away, Logan hopes that as he walked gently through the land, his sacred journey will live on as one step on the path of reconciliation.
I think throughout history we know that there are many examples of, I suppose, symbolic ceremonies, rituals that have been placed where, this is a moment in time that the bishop is taking time to think and practice something, and we may call it different, and I'm saying to myself, not necessarily different, but he's just reminding us that there's a treatment of a people that needs to be revisited. And this not only is among our nations, but it's around the world. And so from a ritualistic point of view, ceremonial point of view, it's just consistent with what the church does and what we do in our big house, in our house of government, and our laws of nature.
And the glory of the Lord will be revealed. And the glory of the Lord will be revealed. We are.
I think symbolic acts are like opening the door. We have had doors closed and probably locked. The key has been turned now, so I see the symbolism of the journey is that someone has come along, turned the knob, and opened the door.
Blessing of God who created you, the Son who has befriended you, the Spirit who has gifted you, be upon you this day and every day. Amen.
Fading in the wind, groping in the dark, drowning in our sin. Hear your gentle voice in the wilderness. Make way, make way, make way. Make way, make way, make way. Make way, make